We've done it, guys. We made it to October 7th, 2023. Today we are looking at the Iran-Israel 12-day war. This is Kings and Generals Modern. Now this video is going to be divided into 3 parts. The first part will cover the events of the 7th through the 9th. The second part will cover the events of the 10th through the 11th. And finally, we'll look at what happened on the 12th before we move forward. But fair warning, this video will contain some graphic imagery that might not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. On October 7th, 2023, at 6:30 a.m. Israel time, a massive surprise attack was launched by the Houthi rebels across the Gaza border. Israeli media sources reported that dozens of missiles were fired from Gaza into southern Israel. In response, Israel immediately activated its early warning system throughout southern Israel. Sirens blared across the region, giving civilians only seconds to seek shelter. Many people could be seen running for cover as the sirens wailed. The Iron Dome missile defense system was activated and began intercepting incoming missiles. Within a few hours, over 1,000 rockets had been fired by the Houthis, according to the Israel Defense Forces. By comparison, during the 2022 Israel-Gaza war, over 4,000 rockets were fired throughout the entire conflict, so these numbers are already unprecedented. As the dust began to settle and the incoming rockets slowed, Israel wasted no time in responding. Israeli fighter jets and attack helicopters reportedly struck multiple Houthi targets throughout Gaza. These included multiple military positions, weapons depots, and tunnels. Despite this, the Houthi continued to fire rockets until approximately 10 a.m. At this point, Israel began an offensive operation into southern Lebanon targeting Hezbollah positions. As Israeli aircraft conducted airstrikes against Hezbollah targets, surface-to-air missiles were fired by Hezbollah in an attempt to intercept them. By 10:30 a.m., Israel had struck over 40 targets throughout Lebanon. This included multiple Hezbollah military positions, ammunition depots, rocket launchers, and even some of their air defense systems. As Israeli aircraft conducted airstrikes across Lebanon, Hezbollah attempted to engage Israeli aircraft with anti-aircraft missiles. However, none of these missiles were able to effectively engage the Israeli aircraft. At around the same time, Israeli ground forces began moving into southern Lebanon. Israeli Merkava tanks spearheaded the advance. These behemoth tanks rumbled through the streets of northern Israel towards the Lebanon border. Some reports suggest that they were accompanied by infantry fighting vehicles and other armored vehicles. This armored spearhead represented Israel's initial foray into Lebanon. Their goal was likely to disrupt Hezbollah's positions and potentially capture some territory. By 11:30 a.m., Israeli ground forces had entered southern Lebanon and clashed with Hezbollah fighters. According to reports, there were fierce firefights between the two sides as Israeli forces advanced. However, details about the clashes were scarce. Around 12:30 p.m., Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened his security cabinet for an emergency meeting. During the meeting, they reportedly discussed the situation in Gaza and Lebanon and coordinated their response. By 1:30 p.m., the Israeli Air Force conducted airstrikes against Iranian Revolutionary Guards positions throughout Syria. The strikes reportedly targeted military positions and weapon depots. The stated purpose of the strikes was to degrade Iran's ability to support Hezbollah and Hamas. By 2:30 p.m., the Israeli strikes in Syria appeared to have succeeded in their immediate goal. For several hours, no significant rocket fire was reported from Lebanon or Gaza. It seemed that Iran and its allies had absorbed the initial shock of the Israeli strikes. They likely needed time to regroup and assess the situation. During this lull in hostilities, Israeli leaders probably used the opportunity to bolster their defenses. This likely included reinforcing troop deployments along the borders, readying additional missile defense systems, and gathering intelligence on enemy positions. However, the calm did not last long. Around 5:30 p.m., renewed rocket fire was reported from Lebanon. The rockets reportedly came from southern Lebanon near the border with Israel. Once again, Israel's early warning system blared across the north. giving civilians mere seconds to reach bomb shelters. The Iron Dome system sprang into action, shooting down the incoming rockets. As the evening wore on, the rocket fire from Lebanon continued. By 8:30 p.m., reports indicated that over 50 rockets had been fired from Lebanon that day. It was becoming increasingly clear that the initial Israeli strikes had only partially succeeded. Hezbollah and Iran had quickly recovered and were launching a sustained rocket barrage at Israel. In response, Israel intensified its airstrikes across Lebanon. Reportedly, Israeli aircraft struck numerous Hezbollah military positions, weapons depots, and rocket launchers. The goal was to disrupt Hezbollah's rocket supply and firing infrastructure. However, Hezbollah seemed prepared. They either moved much of their rockets and equipment deeper into Lebanon, or they destroyed them in place. The Israeli airstrikes caused significant damage, but they did not appear to be decisive. By 10:30 p.m., it was evident that Israel could not rely solely on airstrikes to stop the rocket fire. They needed to commit ground forces. The Israel Defense Forces began a major push into southern Lebanon. Armored columns moved forward, supported by infantry and artillery. Their goal was to advance beyond the border and disrupt Hezbollah's rear echelon forces. Israeli forces pushed deep into southern Lebanon, penetrating several kilometers from the border. They reportedly engaged Hezbollah forces in several fierce battles. During these engagements, Israeli ground forces showcased their firepower superiority. However, they also faced determined Hezbollah resistance. By midnight, it became clear that the fighting would continue into the next day. The Israeli public likely braced for a long and arduous conflict. The coming days promised to be filled with intense fighting as Israel sought to dislodge Hezbollah from southern Lebanon. On October 8, 2023, Israel continued its offensive operations in southern Lebanon. Israeli ground forces pressed their attack, moving deeper into Lebanese territory. Their goal was to destroy Hezbollah's military infrastructure and force them out of southern Lebanon. The fighting was intense, with both sides suffering casualties. Israeli forces engaged Hezbollah in numerous firefights across the region. Throughout the day, the sounds of battle echoed across the border. Israeli aircraft conducted numerous airstrikes against Hezbollah targets. These strikes were aimed at disrupting Hezbollah's command and control and their ability to resupply their troops in the front lines. Despite the fierce fighting, Israeli forces continued to advance. By the end of the day, they had reportedly penetrated several kilometers into Lebanon. They had also secured several key strategic positions, including heights overlooking Hezbollah's main supply routes. The situation on the southern border was dire. The constant rocket fire from Gaza and Lebanon overwhelmed Israel's defenses. Sirens sounded repeatedly throughout the day, interrupting the lives of millions of Israelis. The Iron Dome system worked tirelessly, intercepting hundreds of rockets. Yet despite the system's efforts, some rockets inevitably slipped through. These rockets caused significant damage, injuring and even killing Israeli civilians. As the day wore on, the Israeli leadership faced a growing crisis. The dual attacks from Lebanon and Gaza threatened to engulf the entire country. They needed to find a way to stabilize the situation before it spiraled out of control. As the sun set on October 8, 2023, the situation remained fluid. Fighting raged across southern Lebanon and the Gaza border. Israel's airstrikes and ground assaults continued, but Hezbollah and Hamas showed no signs of backing down. The stage was set for a protracted and bloody conflict. October 9, 2023, dawned with renewed determination. For Israel, the previous day's attacks had shaken the nation, but they were ready to fight back. Israeli forces redoubled their efforts in southern Lebanon. Ground forces advanced, engaging Hezbollah in fierce battles. Israeli aircraft conducted wave after wave of airstrikes, targeting Hezbollah's military infrastructure. As the fighting intensified, the true nature of the conflict became clear. This was not just a border incursion, it was a full-scale offensive aimed at eliminating Hezbollah's presence in southern Lebanon. But Israel's troubles were not confined to the north. In Gaza, the situation was equally dire. The incessant rocket fire showed no signs of abating. Sirens blared throughout the day, shattering the peace of Israeli cities. The Iron Dome system worked tirelessly, yet some rockets inevitably found their way through, causing damage and casualties. Faced with this onslaught, Israel had to make a critical decision. Could they continue with the Lebanon offensive, or did they need to divert resources to secure their northern border? The answer likely involved a delicate balance of military strategy and political considerations. Throughout the day, the Israeli leadership remained in constant communication with world powers. Diplomatic efforts were underway to secure a ceasefire, or at least a temporary halt to the hostilities. But Iran and its allies showed little willingness to negotiate. They likely hoped to capitalize on Israel's predicament, pushing them to the brink. As the sun set on October 9, 2023, the situation remained precarious. Fighting continued unabated in Lebanon and Gaza. Israel was caught in a pincer movement, struggling to contain the threats from both fronts. The coming hours would be crucial, determining whether Israel could hold on, or if they would be forced to make tough choices. October 10, 2023 marked a turning point in the conflict. The previous days had witnessed intense fighting across Lebanon and Gaza. Now the situation was reaching a critical juncture. By 6:30 a.m., it was clear that Israel could not sustain the dual onslaught. Something had to give. Israel made the difficult decision to divert substantial forces from the Lebanon front to the Gaza border. This shift in focus signaled the gravity of the situation. Israel's leadership had deemed the Gaza threat more immediate and pressing. This decision led to a noticeable decrease in the pace of Israel's offensive in Lebanon. The number of airstrikes and ground engagements diminished. While Israel continued to target Hezbollah, the intensity dropped significantly. As the day wore on, the situation in Gaza escalated dramatically. The incessant rocket fire showed no signs of stopping. Every hour brought a new barrage of missiles raining down on Israeli territory. The Iron Dome system was pushed to its limits, working around the clock to intercept these missiles. Yet amidst this chaos, a disturbing trend emerged. The rockets fired from Gaza were not only numerous, but also highly accurate. Many of them landed close to their intended targets, causing severe damage and casualties. It was evident that Hamas had improved their missile technology, posing a greater threat to Israeli civilians. By 10:30 a.m., the Israeli government convened an emergency meeting. The situation in Gaza had become too perilous to ignore. They needed to come up with a solution to protect their citizens. The meeting resulted in the announcement of a nationwide mobilization. All able-bodied Israelis were called to active military service. This included reservists, conscripts, and even some civilians. The goal was to bolster Israel's defenses and prepare for a possible ground assault into Gaza. Meanwhile, as the day progressed, Israel faced a moral dilemma. On one hand, they needed to protect their citizens from the relentless rocket fire. On the other hand, the fighting in Lebanon was far from over. Hezbollah remained entrenched in southern Lebanon, continuing to fire rockets at Israel. This dilemma posed a difficult choice for Israel. Could they split their forces between Gaza and Lebanon, or would they have to prioritize one front over the other? The answer likely involved a complex calculus of military risks and political considerations. As the evening descended on October 10, 2023, the situation was precarious. Israel struggled to cope with the dual threats from Gaza and Lebanon. Their decision to prioritize Gaza had eased the immediate rocket threat, but it left their position in Lebanon vulnerable. With Hezbollah still active, Israel was trapped in a precarious balance, trying to hold the line until reinforcements arrived. October 11, 2023 was a pivotal day in the conflict. By this point, Israel had made a critical decision. Faced with the dual threats from Gaza and Lebanon, they had chosen to prioritize Gaza. This meant diverting substantial military resources to the southern border, bolstering their defenses against the rockets. But this decision had consequences. While Israel managed to blunt the worst of the rocket barrages from Gaza, their offensive in Lebanon stalled. The fighting in the north became localized, with neither side able to make significant gains. Throughout the day, the situation in Gaza remained tense. The incessant rocket fire continued, although at a slightly reduced rate. Israel's air defenses worked tirelessly to intercept these missiles, ensuring the safety of their citizens. The effectiveness of these defenses likely contributed to the relative calm among the Israeli population. But this calm was deceptive. Both Hamas and Hezbollah remained committed to their offensives. Each side likely saw the other's actions as a distraction, allowing them to focus on their primary objectives. As the day wore on, it became clear that a prolonged conflict was in the cards. Israel was in for a long haul, requiring them to balance competing threats, protect their citizens, and achieve their strategic goals. The coming days would test their military capabilities and resilience like never before. So by the evening of October 11, 2023, the situation had stabilized, but it was a fragile stability. Israel's focus on Gaza had paid off in reducing the rocket threat, but it had left their position in Lebanon weakened. Hezbollah's continued rocket fire served as a constant reminder of this vulnerability. October 12, 2023 dawned with renewed determination for Israel. The previous days had seen a stabilization of sorts, but this did not signal the end of the conflict. In fact, both Hamas and Hezbollah were preparing for a final push. By 6:30 a.m., it was evident that Israel had reached a critical point. The rocket fire from Gaza had subsided, allowing Israel to focus on their northern border. This shift in focus was made necessary by Hezbollah's continued attacks, which threatened to overwhelm Israeli defenses. To counter this threat, Israel committed substantial reinforcements to the Lebanon front. Elite combat units were deployed alongside air defense systems. Their goal was to repel any large-scale incursion by Hezbollah and protect Israeli territory. But Hezbollah was not content with merely probing Israeli defenses. By 10:30 a.m., their leader, Hassan Nasrallah, announced an all-out assault. Hezbollah launched a massive offensive, sending thousands of fighters across the border. Their goal was clear: seize territory within Israel and inflict maximum casualties. The ensuing battle was fierce. Israeli ground forces engaged Hezbollah in intense close-quarters combat. Meanwhile, Israeli aircraft conducted relentless airstrikes against Hezbollah positions. The goal was to degrade Hezbollah's ability to wage war, but the fighting was brutal and costly. By 2:30 p.m., it was evident that Israel was taking heavy casualties. Their ranks were being depleted, forcing them to rely on reserve units. Despite this, they continued to hold the line, preventing Hezbollah from making any significant territorial gains. As the day wore on, it became clear that Israel was in trouble. Their forces were spread thin, trying to contain Hezbollah's offensives on two fronts. The fighting had taken a toll on both sides, but Hezbollah's superior numbers were starting to take their toll. By 8:30 p.m., the situation had stabilized. Israel's defenses had held, but they had paid a heavy price. The conflict had entered a stalemate, leaving both sides exhausted and depleted. The coming days would likely bring a fragile truce as both sides regrouped and assessed their options. That concludes today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button.